Pre-game approach, on-deck circle, at bat to at bat, thinking along with the pitcher. These are all things we discuss on this episode, number 12 of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. And don't forget, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe. New episodes every Monday at 9 a.m. We're available on Apple, Google, Spotify, TuneIn Radio and the TuneIn Radio app, iHeartRadio and the iHeartRadio app as well. Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, episode number 12. And I'm Jim, as always, joining me, renowned hitting instructor, professional evaluator, my former coach, friend, and co-host, Jake Epstein. Jake, happy 4th of July. Happy America.
Yes, sir. That's a great day.
Happy Independence Day. I was reading some stories on MLB.com earlier in the week, some headlines, and the one story that stuck out to me, you probably know about this, Bobby Bonilla, a few days ago, it was Bobby Bonilla Day. The Mets paid him $1.19 million the other day. Imagine that. So $1.19 million arriving in your bank account until 2035. He'll be 72 years old. So look, we did a Bryce Harper episode last week discussing his swing. When he got offered $300 million from the Nationals with all that deferred money, it's like asking the question, if you won the lottery, would you take the lump sum or would you spread it out with deferred payments? I'd probably spread it out. I see nothing wrong with that one day of the year getting that $1.19 million.
I'm trying to think when he signed that contract, right? Like how many years ago he had signed that contract. And absolutely, talk about a retirement fund. So many people blow through money and make bad investments, and like, why not? Yeah. I think that was the most genius move he could have asked for. Obviously, hoping that if he were to pass, upon getting the total value that it would, be paid to his family. But I think that's just a great setup he created.
So you know more than me. Am I missing something with deferred payments? Is there taxes and extra taxes involved? I don't understand it. I feel like you win the lottery or a mini part of the lottery when you have deferred payments on any contract once a year. I'm confused here.
Yeah, it's just, money in hand, right? So, it's more, hey, I can take that money now and I can invest it, and maybe my investment guy is going to make, 6 to 10% on it per year.
Yeah. Okay.
On that
All right.
huge level. Say for Bonilla, it was $20 million. Well, $20 million earning 6 to 10% every single year, compounding is definitely worth more than, getting the million every year. So right. I think that people see it, as more of an investment. They can make some interest on it.
All right. Fair enough. I'm still in the deferred camp, I guess.
Yeah, I think so too. Maybe he got more in the deferred categories, right? So maybe if he took a lump sum, it only would have come out to, $900,000 each year. And instead, he was able to get more. You never know how those contracts are negotiated.
Well, I was reading that story on MLB.com earlier in the week, and right now the website actually has storylines for certain teams, and it's putting up storylines, I guess, every single day for every team until opening day. And I want to ask you, I have a couple of storylines I'm thinking about in my head, but it's thinking more long-term, bigger picture. But I want to ask you, before we get into our topic today, what do you think one of the biggest or a couple of storylines that really stick out going into this year's very unorthodox baseball season?
I'm not sure if it's, a current storyline, but it might be. It's there might be guys that hit 400 this year.
I was going to ask you that. Thank you for bringing that up. Go ahead.
I really do. I think somebody's going to get hot. Somebody's going to hit the ground running, and there might be a 60 game fight for 400, and then what do you do? That's like a double asterisk, at 60 games. But I think that would be a really cool, fun race, as well as the underdog race. Who's gonna be hot? Which team? I think we may have talked about the Padres. Like I feel like the Padres could make a little run, in 60 games or something like that. Or
some experts were saying the Reds as well.
And then the Reds too, yeah. And then, other teams that are supposed to be great, like maybe the Dodgers come out or the Yankees come out with a really slow start and they lose, say 10 or 15 games. And it's like, man, you might be done already. You have one big valley in your schedule where you don't play well and, done.
Yeah, I wonder if teams though will just say, well, it was only 60 games and it's not a true season, and I wonder how much of that World Series championship people will weigh it compared to other years, previous years of playing a full season. I guess I don't know. I guess it's just it's on the eyes of the beholder, so to speak, in terms of the mindset.
Yeah, I think as a baseball player, a ring's a ring. You're still playing for something. It'd be like a kid in a 4-day tournament. That kid still wants to get that, medal or ring or whatever at the end. He still wants to be a champ. So I hope that's the case for these guys. Mm-hmm. And there's players that are sitting out and, guys that, I read, Mike Trout and his wife's pregnant and he's, scared to death. And I think there's really a lot of guys that they make so much money that they can sit out. Like this season doesn't matter to them, where it matters to the young guy making the minimum or the guy, that finally got some arbitration money. And he needs that, few $100,000 this year to survive, where I think a lot of the big guys are like, I'm good.
Right. And just to be clear, add some context to that for the audience, that if you don't know, players get paid. It's very interesting, but players get paid in a 6-month period. They get installations in a 6-month period. They don't even get paid in spring training. So to your point, exactly, you get that arbitration money, you get the minimum. Take, I'm just going to use our guys, Bo Bichette, a Danny Jansen. They're making not so much the minimum, but they're making a bit of a bump up from that. They're only getting paid that 6 months out of the year. And I understand, that's still a lot of money, nevertheless. But it all has to do with, and this is adult stuff, we're adulting here, all has to do with financing and all has to do with budgeting for them personally. So for that, again, like you said, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, I'm not saying they're going to sit out, but they could afford to sit out because they have that money, they have that luxury. Other guys, not so much because, again, how they get paid. It's very interesting. This is something I learned. I read the whole new CBA from 2016 front to back, and that's when I first actually learned they don't get paid all throughout the year. They get paid almost as like independent contractors in a way, where it's from April until October, and then postseason bonuses.
Yeah, and you can imagine a guy like Bo. He probably had a decent bonus, but a guy that didn't have a decent bonus, right? And went out and maybe bought his first house, maybe bought his parents a house, and he's got to make payments on that, and he doesn't have any income coming in. Those are the guys you don't hear of.
Right.
They have a family, they have a house, they got cars, they got, they have expenses and they're struggling because they're not the guys that make, $1 million or $2 million plus a year. Not everybody makes that. So anyway, it's good to see those guys. I know they're only making, a little bit less than half their salary, but hey, they're employed.
Exactly. And there are some, and we talked about this last week, there are some positives to this. I saw a picture of Miguel Cabrera. I don't know if you saw it online, but I saw a picture of him, and he lost a ton of weight. He looks great. We could be seeing like a renaissance Miguel Cabrera here within the next couple of years, because this could serve as this season. If you're looking at it like the way I do, glass half full, can serve as someone as a reset for baseball. And like I said last week, and you said injuries happen and it's high performance, I understand that, but getting guys like Miguel Cabrera losing weight, getting those guys fully healthy to where they can go into next season and the next off season fully healthy, ready to train for that next 2021 season, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's born again. I mean, when you're that age and you can take 10 months off or 9 months off, like he's going to feel pretty good, and he's going to be hungry and eager to prove himself. Exactly. Where he can be maybe in this new body.
I still think he can play and hit.
Yeah,
I mean, he can just His swing still plays, and
yeah.
I don't know. When people say he was starting to sort of tread down, I saw it, but I still saw that great swing. I really did. And it doesn't help either that he's on a Tigers team that's completely rebuilding right now. I mean, that oftentimes hampers a star's motivation and just their own overall play on the field.
Yeah, and he's a guy that has so much fun playing the game. I mean, he and Beltre have the best, outtakes. Like if you go on YouTube or something like that, where they're pulling pranks with their buddies, or buddies on the other team. They're pulling their jerseys and messing around with fly balls. It's a game. It's still a game for those guys, and I think that's fun. That's fun to watch.
Really quick, Beltre, Hall of Famer?
I think so.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Because he wasn't one-dimensional. Like, that dude could play some defense, too.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing defense.
Cannon for an arm.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into today's topic, our title, Taking Care of Your Mentals. Thank you, Marshawn Lynch, by the way, for that title. We're talking about the mental approach of hitters today. And this is something that's been discussed the last few years between scouts and player development people. How do we get these younger kids, these players, focused? And there was a question last night that was posed on Twitter from a scout that I actually answered to. It said, what are the mannerisms and the movements, I'm paraphrasing, of big league and players that are separate on their own in their own stratosphere? And I answered with just every little thing, the way they move, the way they talk, even with all the way down to how their lockers are set up. Now, again, those players are in a different stratosphere. And I think in player development, you want to try, and this is kind of an obvious, but you want to try to get all of those players to that certain level. You'll succeed, but you'll also at times fail too. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the business. But just overall, mentally, how would you get players mentally in tune with understanding that baseball is their job and they need to take every little thing that they do from the moment they arrive to the ballpark and turn it into something that they can take to the game that night?
Yeah, even with younger players that I train, it's you don't want to use the term money, but it is. It's about money. At some point in their life, it's about money. If they're in junior high, they want to make the high school team because they know if they can make the high school team and they can keep playing on their travel teams, then maybe they get a scholarship, and that scholarship is worth money. And then if they work, hard in college and they get bigger and stronger and faster and they hone their skills and they push themselves, then, hey, maybe they can actually make a paycheck one day and sign a professional contract. And then once you're in pro ball, now you got to feed your family. And that's kind of how I use it. That at some point, if you want to be great in this game, you got to feed your family. And you have to be prepared to feed your family. And that might mean waking up and having a good breakfast, right? Instead of waking up 20 minutes before the bus leaves, you wake up and you have breakfast. We used to make guys accountable on the road at Mizzou by taking attendance at breakfast. Hey, breakfast at the hotel is served from this time to this time. Be there. And our nutrition people would be there making sure people are accountable for that. In hopes that, hey, these guys will. Now, how many people needed to be really accountable for that? Well, I don't know. Maybe their freshman year they did, right? They really didn't know the system. They didn't have the leadership, but that's where it starts. So you want players to have fun. You don't want to make it a job, but there has to be that self-worth and that dedication that you want to be great, right? You're not just, and I got that late. Like, to be honest, I probably didn't get that till I was almost in college. So I was pretty fortunate to be able to just kind of cruise by and be good. And, I worked and I practiced a lot, but I didn't have that, I'm going to step on your neck to get to the next level. And that's really what you have to be. Like, if you have teammates and you want to win, right? Like, if your team wins, you're going to look better, right? You're going to have a better pedestal to be seen by, scouts or recruiters. But you have to have that internal that you want somebody to compete with. So I had a guy I competed with in high school. We were both catchers. right? And we both played third and we both played first too, but it was like we were the two catchers and we were like best of friends, but it was like, oh, you got a hit? I need to get hit. Like, I'm going to get a better hit. I'm going to get 2 hits today. Sure. I'm going to throw more runners out than you, and then we would BS about it, after the fact, after the weekend was over. But we had that where there was competition to be better. And we both went to different colleges, so it didn't matter. But that's how you had to have. Even when I went to college, like my roommate, we were like the two kind of first baseman catcher. Like, we kind of went back and forth from that. And we had like a home run race, I'll never forget, one year. And I think I hit 15 and he hit 14 or 15, and it was like every day he would hit one, I'd hit one later in the inning or later in the game, and if I hit one early in the game, he would hit one later in the game, and it was just a fun competitive environment. But you have to have that competition to push yourself and really be ready and prepared for the next level, because that's the idea. Like, I mean, it's fun to play baseball when you're 10. Like, don't get like that's where it starts. And you don't need to be crazy competitive at that age. You need to get at bats and you need to love the game like Miguel Cabrera and Adrian Beltre do. But as you get older, you do have to have that, hey, I have pride in myself. I wouldn't show up to my job with my shirt untucked. I wouldn't show up at my job and
hungover.
What's that?
Hungover.
Hungover, right. Like, I have to be prepared because you never know when you're going to get fired.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways we can go with some of the great stuff you put in there. And you mentioned that internal fire, that competition that you have, and this is why I think wrestling, my uncle asked me about a month ago, I guess, about my godson wrestling. What do you think about him wrestling? And I said, I think it's a great idea. And I think it's a great idea because it's a one-on-one competition. I love that. I have a rivalry with one of my, one of my best childhood friends. We have a ping pong rivalry, him and I. And I always want to beat him really badly. And we always talk a bunch of shit. And it's that competition, though, that I think breeds the best in people. And even if it's whether it's internal, whether it's with somebody else, that's why I think doing those sports one-on-one wrestling, like, for example, if you've ever seen the Rocky movies, his biggest rival is the Russian-born boxer. I forget his name now. Drago. I think it's Drago. Yeah, Ivan Drago. Or is that his son? Anyway, that's it.
No, you're right. I mean, I know you're young, and you had to watch them like on DVDs instead of the theater. But yes, it's Ivan Drago.
Ivan Drago, yeah. Well, that's it. Well, and if you've seen all the movies too, and you notice in the beginning the competition's against himself, and then he has his biggest rival with Ivan Drago. Now, to me, that breeds out the character in people and the character in athletes. And this is where I think, and we're kind of getting a little bit off topic here, but this is where I think athletes post their playing career struggle a little bit because they lose that competition. Now they have to find that purpose again. But with players now, they have that luxury of being competitive, of every single day getting a chance to actually compete.
And you really see that with golfers. I feel like professional PGA golfers, they make a lot of the top tier. Again, you have guys that are struggling to stay on the tour, right, and not bouncing back to the Korn Ferry Tour or whatever. So, but you see those guys, and it's not about like the President's Cup, right?
Yeah.
Or the President's Cup and the Ryder Cup. They don't make any money.
Mm-hmm.
They make no money. They get stuff, right? They get stuff, but it's like all about representing your country.
Yeah.
Or it's about, I love seeing guys down the stretch where it's like, there's 3 or 4 guys within one shot of the lead, and you see the veteran guys go for broke. Like, they don't care if they finish second or 20th.
Yeah.
Right. Second place means absolutely nothing, even though it might be $500,000 or $600,000 versus, $100,000. They don't care. They want that title.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see that in golf versus a guy that's just on tour and he's like, well, look how many points I'll get if I finish second place. I'm going to lay up here. Or, I'm going to take an iron off the tee instead of just I'm going to go for broke here. And I think when you are at different points in your career and in your life, like right now, a Mike Trout versus a guy that just made the 40-man roster, or the 25-man roster, or the 60, whatever that 60 thing is.
Sure.
I think we're seeing that. You're going to see a lot of young guys just getting an opportunity here, and a lot of the older guys that are like, yeah, I don't really need to wear a mask and do this for a couple months.
Yeah.
Just because it's not that drive, the money, and maybe the title. I still think a ring is a ring, and a World Series championship means something. But maybe they'll only give them like half a ring. It'll be like a half-carat diamond instead of a full carat.
Well, I mean, I guess the issue with that though is that it's not even a half a season. It's 60 games. It's not even 81 games. So just just give them the whole damn ring.
Right.
What about the day of the game? I guess we're talking, though, in terms of college player. We'll take the Trouts and Harpers out of it, I guess. But we're talking, I guess, minor league guys, player development guys, talking maybe some college hitters. What about day of the game? Life happens, in the morning, fight with your girlfriend, fight with your parents. I don't know. You wake up with a headache, whatever the case may be. Morning's not going well. How do you get yourself into a proper mindset as a hitter to get to the ballpark that day when you arrive and get ready to possibly fail 3 or 4 times that night at the plate?
Your field and your clubhouse is a bubble for your life. Mm-hmm. It's the same 25 or 35 guys that really are looking out for you. I mean, that is your family that you're spending more time with than the people at home most of the time. And, sometimes that puts you into, I'm stepping into a bubble. I'm stepping into a different environment than my apartment, than my classes, than, wherever I was. And when you get to the park, you have your routine. And routines are so crucial. Like I remember growing up, my dad had his coffee routine, right? Like he would make his coffee. He'd have his cup right next to the coffee maker every morning, and like in the same way. And it was like he'd wake up at 5 o'clock and he'd push this button. Like he had this routine, and I remember it from a young kid. It was always the same. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you that's what it was like when he played. So when you step into the clubhouse, it's like I have my routine. Okay, I'm gonna change into my gear. I'm going to go, maybe grab something to eat, maybe something to drink. Maybe I'm going to meet with the coaches. Maybe I'm going to go over some video first. Then I'm going to do my stretching, right? And it's all scheduled. And you hope that within that routine, because as a baseball player, it's like a 2 to 3 hour routine prior to a game starting, mm-hmm. right? I mean, it doesn't start. If the game's at 7 o'clock, our guys would show up at 3. And we would be out stretching by 4, and then we'd have all kinds of stuff in between. So, hopefully that clears their mind and they get into their special place where they can perform. And some players don't, and you see it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you'll see it during pregame BP. You'll see it during infield, outfield. And that's when you may have to have, a talk with a younger player to get them right. And if it's an older player, typically the captain or the leader of that team will get them right.
Yeah.
Like that's their job. That's why they wear the C on their shirt, because they see things to keep that ship going the right direction. And if something's going to cause a problem, then those teammates, I'm talking about more at the professional level, the teammates will take care of it versus coaches and management.
Right. What about in player development when it comes to batting practice, BP in the cage, when it comes to going out in the turtle, hitting in the shell that night? I've heard that the Yankees, the Nationals, are a little bit more hands-on with their player development, where with us, with the Blue Jays, Pittsburgh, maybe not as much. You sort of do your own type of thing, figure it out, and then we can work together if you're a coach and player. But how do you get players in player development to understand, to have that proper approach in the batting cage, how they can figure that out, what they need to work on, what they need to take out to BP on the field in the turtle, and then in succession can take that into the game?
You're always surrounded by people that hopefully have more experience, and that's how Major League Baseball has been for the most part, and that's how college baseball is, right? You have the freshmen coming in. They don't know what the heck is going on, right? They're like rabbits running around, trying to figure out what's, where do I go next? And you have leadership. And leadership doesn't have to be vocal. Leadership is, I like the way that guy trains. I'll give you a short, little story. My freshman year, I rolled into Mizzou, and I didn't know what the heck was going on, right? So overwhelmed with how long practices were and study hall and whatever was going on. So I remember the first week I'm there, there's like 4 or 5 of us freshmen, and we go to practice, and then we eat, and then we come back to study hall, and we got to do study hall till like 9. Well, with us, there was the junior college transfers had to do study hall as well. So after study hall, I don't know, 9 or 9:30, Griffin Moore, I love this guy. Like, he changed my entire career because of this, and he probably doesn't even know it. I mean, he was a great player and a great hitter. He's from California. So we were both from California. He was 2 or 3 years old, two years older than me. And he's like, hey, man, you want to hit? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I had an 8 a.m. math class. I had practice from, 2 to 5. I had study hall from, 7 to 9, 9:30. Now you want to hit? I'm like, we don't even have, like, balls. He's like, I got a bucket of balls in my truck. Come on, let's go. So he knew that I threw good batting practice because I was a catcher, and he knew how well I could throw from, just throwing infield.
Right.
I'm like, okay, so we went into the Big Hearns building, which, we opened it up. It was the big, but I mean, a massive building, right? They played, that was where the basketball stadium was, indoor track, all this stuff. We dropped a couple nets, and we hit for like an hour, hour and a half, turned the music on, and I was absolutely hooked. I'm like, this is so fun. Like, this is what I want to do to every single night. And we did. We hit every night. We didn't have, a night practice or a game moving forward. And I got that internal drive where there's nothing I won't do to be great. So did somebody tell me to do that? No. A guy wanted somebody to throw BP to him. Like, he wasn't trying to help me out. He just knew I could throw strikes. And all of a sudden we, had this relationship, and it was awesome moving forward. So you have to have that leadership. And that's a really good question in terms of, do you let guys figure it out, or do you babysit them? Essentially is what you're asking, right? The Yankees are babysitting guys. They're forcing guys to do certain things.
Right.
Versus professional baseball, for the most part, is, here you go. You're an adult.
Right.
Like, figure it out.
We're paying you. Right. We're paying you to do this.
We're paying you to do this. Like, figure it out, or we'll find somebody else to do it. And I think there definitely has to be monitoring of those players. And I think good player development gives that player a plan to work on. But in professional baseball and even college baseball, you can't force that plan. And that's my job is, hey, here's some areas where you can improve.
Yeah.
I'll force you to do it. Do you think that's the right thing to do? Do those moves make sense to you? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Well, then if you want to start working on it, meet me here at whatever.
Yeah.
Meet me here after practice, and we'll spend some time going over it. And then if that person doesn't show up, then I know that it wasn't important to them. They didn't really buy into it. And I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to go out of my way to do that. So the professional level's, the same way, where it's, here's what you need to do to be better.
Yeah.
And I can give you a plan to work on pregame, in on the field, BP, in the cage BP, maybe BP between BP, right?
Yeah.
After on-field BP, maybe gets changed, and then let's do a couple more things, right before we hit the field, and then, let your ability take over, after that. So I think I'm not a big, as a human being, I'm a micromanager for my business.
Same.
It's hard for me to really just let things go and say, you do this instead of me.
Yeah.
Like, I'll go wipe that up. Like, I have no problem cleaning. Or I'll go vacuum that, or I'll go work with this kid. Well, I got to work with this kid too. And you know what I mean? So I'm getting better at that. But at the higher levels, of baseball, it's, you really have to. And I was fortunate. I could do that when I was, coaching, at higher levels, at spring training or in college. It was like, okay, like, here's some info. What do you want to do with that info? Do you want it? I'll give you all I got. Right? If you want to come back and you want to make that change, I will give you everything that I have to help you make that change. And that's the difference with younger players. If I get a 15 or 16-year-old, they are all in. They're like, heck yeah, let's do this. And you never have to worry about it. But with professional players, they have to be nudged sometimes because they've been successful their whole lives.
Yeah.
Right. That's why they're there. And then all of a sudden they get to, A ball, and they were a second round draft pick and they're hitting 160.
Right.
And it's like, well, your ability isn't carrying you. You need to make some adjustments and changes, whether that's physically or mentally.
Yeah. I think everybody, though, with that type of drive that you have has a little bit of that micromanaging in them, because I think they just see things, just their visions. I mean, take Steve Jobs when he was alive, for example. I don't know, take Dana White, Vince McMahon. I'm not a wrestling fan. All those wrestling fans out there. They have their micromanagers. They have their vision because they're so brilliant. And sometimes, like you mentioned, you just have to lay back and let the person you hire do that job that they're hired to do. And it does translate to real life and obviously with baseball too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and players bring, when I hired Matt down in Texas, Matt Yingle, who's, he had a great career, minor league career, played at A&M, junior college guy, scrappy guy. And it's like, I let him go, and hey, work with these guys. And I learn stuff every day from him, like, different moves, and he'll say something. I'll be like, I never thought of it that way. Like that's the perfect feel. Yeah. Like, that's the perfect word, and I'll write it down, and I know, I'm sure things that I say, right, with upper body moves or whatever, he's like, I never thought of that because I haven't worked with, 10-year-olds all the time when, all of a sudden we have to get that kid to do where he's used to, he's used to playing the game and what he was feeling. Oh, yeah. So you have to trust your instinct, say, this is the right person that I hired, whether it was a baseball player or a regular employee. And they're going to have better traits than I do at certain things. I want to see those traits. I want to let those shine through, and you can't really put a ceiling on those people. And I think that's where you are sometimes in baseball and player development. It's like you want to let guys go because that's how it always used to be. There was like hardly any coaching, back in the 60s. Yeah. Like I'm trying to remember when the first hitting coach came in. I mean, there was a guy that talked to you about hitting, my dad said, but I don't know if there was a hitting coach before 1970 something, that was titled that way, that actually talked to me. And there were pretty great players, right? I don't think Willie Mays needed a hitting coach to help him out. So, I really think this game has always been a game of, you just kind of figure it out. And now all of a sudden we have all these tools and this information and we have good coaching and now we can suggest what players need to do, I think, at the professional level. But I think making anyone change, no one's going to just change. They've had too much success doing it that they're only going to change once failure hits. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to wait for that. Like, I could always see it coming. Like, this guy's going to struggle. I mean, that's what I get paid for, right? This guy is going to struggle on these pitches. And it might take the opposition 2 seasons to figure that out. And then he's going to have to make adjustment, right? So I can see that ahead of time, but that player may not be able to. Now, if that player will see it with you, now all of a sudden you can bypass all those struggles that may come, later in the season or the next season.
Yeah, that's really good stuff right there. We do have to take a break, and coming up we're going to talk about in-game, on-deck circle stuff, at-bat to at-bat, how it all correlates to the mental approach. But before we do that, let's talk about Epstein Hitting.com and the online academy. What's going on this week, and what is currently going on with the website and how players can get better remotely with you on your online academy?
Yeah, it's been great, and I think we've a lot of people from the podcast are taking advantage of that service. So that's been great. We had like 6 or 7 new players that signed up this week. And what I'm seeing now is players have better swings than they used to have. There's still little, small pieces that need to be fixed where they're, maybe not utilizing their lower body or their sequencing's off. But for the most part, mechanics are getting better. So, yes, absolutely. So I had, like I said, 7 new players sign up. So I got to see 7 new swings. And we started to make adjustments with those players. We started the next day after they sent in the video. So, the online academy, rocking and rolling. That thing really is the best, especially with today in the off season coming up. It's like now is the perfect time to start making your adjustments to your swing before it starts to really ramp up during fall ball.
All right, so visit EpsteinHitting.com and click on the online academy to see all the pricing and get started remotely with Jake and working on your swing, getting better. This episode, number 12, is titled Taking Care of Your Mentals. Thank you, Marshawn Lynch, for that. We're talking mental approach for hitters today on episode 12 of the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. Every new episode comes out at 9 a.m. on Mondays on a variety of platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio. Reach out to us on social media, at Epstein Hitting on Instagram, Twitter, and at Jim Tara on both those platforms as well. You can ask us your questions through that or via email, jimbopodcast21 at gmail.com. Again, jimbopodcast21 at gmail.com. Let's keep the show rolling here, talking the mental approach for successful hitters today. And talking in-game, I've read your book many times that you and your father, Mike, wrote about the mental approach within the game of baseball, actual in-game, and what to look for from a pitcher in the on-deck circle, what to look for at bat to at bat, thinking along with the pitcher, which is so important. We mentioned a story about Larry Walker a week ago, talking about how he said to your father, "Well, or maybe was it Larry Walker? I think it was him. Yeah." Saying how I'm sitting fastball, and your father said, well, that's thinking along with the pitcher. But when you're in the on-deck circle, depending on the pitcher, what kind of approach are you taking mentally, looking for with that pitcher, rather than just trying to get your timing down, which you see a lot of hitters do, or just doing some, when I was a kid in high school, before, you and I worked together, I used to do some of these stretches in the on-deck circle, and it really didn't do anything for my swing or that at bat or that plate appearance at all. So what would you say are the guidelines to getting properly prepared for that next plate appearance in the on-deck circle?
Yeah, it depends on where you are maybe in a series. Is this the second or third game of the series? Do I have a history against this pitcher? So in pro ball, you faced this guy before. In college ball, maybe you faced a guy the night before that had similar stuff, and the pitching coach is calling all the pitches, not the catcher, right? So that information may stay consistent. If you're a 10 or 11-year-old going into a tournament, then, everything's fresh, right? You don't know what this guy has. So my suggestion is always to start watching a guy in a bullpen. So I would try to look during pregame, I would step out and just kind of get loose, watching him in the bullpen and what pitches he or she may be throwing. And then I would watch body language. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't see where the pitches ended up, but I could see if the pitcher, used his hand and said fastball, or said breaking ball, or slider, or changeup, or split. And then I could see their body language after they threw it. Mm-hmm. And you could always tell if that pitcher didn't have a feel for something, like he keeps spiking his breaking ball, right? And his head goes down every time he throws a curveball, and the catcher has to kind of get up and get the ball. So I know he doesn't have a feel for that pitch. So now in the back of my head, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to swing or look for a breaking ball. If he throws one, I'm going to take it every single time, because I don't think he's going to throw for a strike. Yeah. And then I would take that to the mound, right? Now he's warming up between innings or to start the game. Where's that breaking ball? That's my hot spot. Okay, he doesn't have a feel for that breaking ball. And if he still doesn't have a feel for the breaking ball, now I'm feeling really good to just hunt fastballs. So it kind of starts there. And then I'll watch, depending on where I'm hitting in the lineup, how is he pitching the players that are similar to me. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm hitting fifth. How is he pitching that guy third and fourth in front of me, right? Or even if I'm hitting sixth, how is he facing third, fourth, fifth, or third, fourth, or fifth guy? Is he starting with fastballs? Is he getting fastballs? Does he like to start left-handers with changeups? I'm pulling in as much information as I can, so that when I get to the on-deck circle, now I can make up a plan. All right, meat, I got you. Like, throw me that fastball. I'm going to sit on that fastball. I'm going to abort anything else. I'm not going to swing at breaking pitches until I have two strikes, because you're not showing me that you can throw them. Yeah. And then I'm pumping myself up from that. Yes, I'm getting my timing, but I'm, he doesn't even care about me, right? I'm in the on-deck circle, and I'm pumping myself up that I'm going to get this guy. Like, there's no way he's going to get me out. Even if he comes in and throws 3 hammers for strikes and he sticks the bat up my rear end, my next time up, I'm still going to have that same mindset that I'm going to get this son of a gun. So, it kind of starts for my guys. I like to get them to start thinking about things during pregame.
Sure.
how they're being pitched. With video now, sometimes you can figure out umpires. Like, does this guy have a tight zone or a big zone? I mean, at the major league level, like they have reports on all the umpires, so it's a little bit easier. But is this guy giving that pitch, middle away or whatever? So, yes. And then in terms of what you guys are doing in the actual on deck circle, what's comfortable for you? Ted Williams used to sit on one knee with two bats and swing a few times. Like, okay, that's your routine. Yeah. Some guys swing, chop straight down. I remember Derek Jeter used to chop straight down in the on-deck circle, and then he would get his lead elbow up really high in games. Like, whatever. Maybe that helped keep it under control. Yeah. Sometimes I'd see guys, just use one hand in the on-deck circle. But what I would always do is, or what I would get my players to do is I would time that pitcher. So I would dance with him. I'd be in the box like I was taking the at-bat. I would load. I would stride. I would keep my hands back. He would deliver the pitch. Okay, that felt good. He's got, a slower windup or a faster windup. So I'm getting my timing and rhythm. And then as the catcher would throw the ball back, then I would take a swing. Mm-hmm. Whatever that swing was, whatever I was trying to feel, extension or staying shorter to the ball or whatever. And then boom, I would get in there and start all over again with my rhythm. The pitcher's getting his sign from the catcher. Okay, I'm just kind of staring at him. I'm getting loose. And so that you're getting all these positive reps before you get you're starting your routine before you get into the batter's box.
Yeah, I think that's the best approach to take, and it sounds so simplistic, but sometimes that simplicity is the best thing. I mean, you see so many guys, at the college level, and even somewhat in the lower levels of professional baseball, just doing some stuff that really doesn't pertain to their plate appearance. It's not part of a routine. I mean, you mentioned Jeter's routine, chopping down. Hunter Pence had a kind of a weird extension type deal there. But the one thing I always notice about pro guys, they're always working to get their timing down with pitchers.
Right. Timing is, there's an old saying, hitting is timing and pitching is upsetting timing. Yeah. And that's what guys are trying to do. And today, if pitchers are really athletic and they practice these things by varying their rhythm, by varying their windup and how long it takes them to deliver the ball. Typically once the ball comes out of the glove from a pitcher, that timing is going to be the same. But, pitchers will change their leg kick. Maybe they'll mix in a slide step now, a little bit more than they use with no one on base, right? They're just trying to mess up that hitter. You saw it with Justin Turner years ago because of his big leg kick. Pitchers were trying all kinds of crazy stuff to mess him up. And timing and rhythm is comfort. Sure. And when a player is comfortable in the box and they're not jumpy and they feel good, they're going to, even if they're swings. So, I mean, if you have players there's players with bad mechanics, right? Players with bad swings. So what does that mean? It means they're going to have peaks and valleys. When they're hot, they're really hot. And when they're cold, they're really cold. Those are players that rely on perfect timing. Okay. So even if their swing is only on plane for 4 inches, their timing is so good during that week that it doesn't matter, right? They're going to smoke balls. But all of a sudden, a week later, if they're getting their foot down or they're not comfortable, they get their foot down too late or too early, now all of a sudden those pitches they were smoking, they're fouling off. Mm-hmm. And then a week later, their timing is moved off a little bit. Now they're missing those pitches completely. So that's where mechanics play such a big part in being consistent, where timing makes things special. Mm-hmm. Having a long or a large contact zone, makes your 0 for 20s, 0 for 5s. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you can get back on track.
Yeah. Really quick, just want to circle back to something. What if you talked about how looking for a guy who doesn't have his breaking ball that night, or maybe his changeup's not working well for him. But what about when you're facing Max Scherzer or Steven Strasburg or Garrett Cole, when they have everything working, and even when it's not working that night, it's still better than everybody else? How do you approach that? What's your plan of attack then?
I usually would fake an injury, so I didn't have to fake. No, my dad told me this at a young age because he was on the Nolan Ryan list of strikeouts, but he wasn't too bad off Nolan Ryan, like for compared to most guys, and he was actually his first. I think my dad was his first baseman in like 3 of his no hitters or something like that. Nolan's no hitter, so they were very friendly. They have a good relationship, but he used to say when I faced guys like that, I didn't want to get to 2 strikes. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get to 2 strikes because he's going to put you away. So what he would do is he would open up his dead red zone. So as a hitter, it's kind of like a video game. I'm trying to think of like the show or something like that where you can zero in, and target, like I'm looking for a ball in this 6-inch window, right? 6 by 6 inch block.
Yeah.
In that window, I should be able to destroy it, right? And that's what I look for when I'm ahead in the count. Well, what my dad would do is he would make it a 12 by 12 maybe box and say, if anything's in that box, I'm going to go ahead and swing at that early in the count in hopes that even if it's not a mistake, I can still, fight something off and get a base hit. So when you're facing guys like that, you have to be that much better with less than 2 strikes. Like you have to. Now, you also don't want that player to. You have to figure out what the entire team's doing because you can't just sit there and have five pitch innings.
Yeah.
Right. But I think the whole idea of getting guys' pitch counts up nowadays, I mean, that's just me. I don't think that's as important as it was a few years ago because there's so many arms. Oh, you get his pitch count up, and then he only pitches 5 innings.
Right.
Okay, bring in this guy that's throwing 98. Then they bring in another guy that's got nasty breaking balls from a different arm slot. Then you bring in a left-hander that's very, you know what I mean? There's so many specialties in the back end of the bullpen. It doesn't matter, guy. Oh, he's at 100 pitches. He's at 110 pitches at 5 innings. Okay, we'll bring somebody else in that's nasty.
Sure.
At least he gave 5 innings. So I don't think that's as important. But you also, you got to run it up a little bit because you don't want Scherzer going 8 innings and 100 pitches kind of thing. So if that's typically what it is. If this guy is a little bit better, I'm going to have to be assuming that he's throwing strikes too. So I'm not just going up there blind and saying I'm going to swing at everything early in the count. Is he on today? Right? Is he throwing strikes? Is he hitting corners? Did he walk a couple guys last inning? Well, then my mindset might change. But when guys are really good, I usually would have my players be more aggressive early in the count.
Sure.
Because I know they're going to, if this guy's throwing 96 with movement and then all of a sudden he throws, a hammer, you don't have much of a chance for that.
Hey, give your bat to God because your ass is Max Scherzer's. That's for sure. That's my approach to it. How about at bat to bat? Throughout the game. How do you learn from any plate appearance, no matter what the result is?
Yeah, I remember hearing that interview with Albert Pujols probably at least 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't know. How long has Pujols been in the league?
Since 2000. 2000.
Is it that long? Okay.
Yeah.
So
he got drafted in 99 and then made a rocket right to the big leagues.
Yeah, so, you're looking, this was probably 3 years after he was, a big leaguer.
Yeah.
And he said, when I first got here, I used to make adjustments from game to game. Mm-hmm. I'd sit down and think about what happened, during my game and my at-bats, and then I would make an adjustment the next day. He said, then I started making adjustments from a bat to a bat. I would kind of dissect what happened my last time up, and then I would make an adjustment for my next at bat. And he says, now I make adjustment from pitch to pitch. Okay, and what that means is, what is that pitcher trying to do to me? How is he trying to get me out, right? Did he go fast, slow? Does he like to double up and double tap a fastball, then go breaking ball? What is he doing to me right now? And that's what you see when guys step out of the box and maybe they're adjusting their batting gloves. Maybe they're looking down the left field line. Maybe they're staring into space or they're looking at the barrel. What they're doing is they're using the information to assist with their plan right now, and then boom, they bring their front foot back into the box, and now it's time to go.
Yeah.
So, making adjustments, I would see, what did I do? Well, this guy just threw 95, and I pulled him foul. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm probably not going to get another fastball. Like, I'm going to slow my rhythm down. If he decides to throw me a fastball in, he's going to win. But I'm going to now cover the outside part of the plate where maybe I was covering the inside part of the plate with less than 2 strikes because I wanted to juice something. Now, all of a sudden, I'm going to change my rhythm. I'm going to slow my rhythm down. I'm going to let that ball travel, and I'm going to look middle away. And I'm hoping that based on that decision, I still got a chance to get a good hit. Maybe I missed it, right? I had my one pitch. I pulled it foul. Now the count's 0-1. I don't think he's going to throw another fastball in there.
Yeah.
And if he does, good for him. Like, he got me. But if he doesn't, I'm going to be one step ahead of him. and give myself a chance to take a breaking ball, up the middle or to right center field. So those are the different. That's how I want my players to think. From pitch to pitch. If you can get to that level, and those aren't mechanical adjustments at all. Like I said, as a coach, I had a couple players that I could tell them, I need you to swing up or down more, or I need you to slow your rhythm down more if you're early. And I could tell them that little thing, and they could take it to the field their next at bat, because I could see that they were swinging up too much and topping the ball. It wasn't necessarily a wrist roll. It was just a swing plane issue. So sometimes you can have little adjustments like that too, but you typically need a coach for that. I try to tell my players, look, for you, not for Johnny, but for you, Jimmy, right? When you pop it up straight to an infielder, like just cut underneath it, that's because you're swinging down too much. You're too flat. You pop it straight up. Okay. So maybe I don't need to be there. So Jimmy goes out to his college, and his first at bat, he takes a fastball and he pops it straight up to a second baseman or something like that, right? He didn't swing up too much. He just cut it too much. He wasn't on plane, right? The pitch was dropping at 10. He swung at 0. He cut it. He popped it up. Okay. Yeah. So then Jimmy goes back and says, you know what? I got to finish higher. I got to swing up a little bit more. Now all of a sudden he swings up at 10 degrees. The ball was coming down at 10 degrees. He gets a double in the right center field gap, whatever it is. So those are more mechanical at bats, and I want my players to know that. But if I'm a hands-on coach and I'm knowledgeable, then I can offer that advice to a player. And you'll know there's players that say, okay, I'll do it. And then there's other players that say, okay, I'll do it. And then we've talked about players like that, hey, you see 3 changeups per at bat, and you see or 4 changeups, and you see 1 fastball. What are you going to look for here? Changeup. Okay, then they take the changeup. What the heck were you looking for? Well, what if he threw me a fastball?
Yeah,
dude, that's 25% of the time.
Right. Those are the guys though that are overthink everything though too, and that's also at times a problem for a hitter as well.
And maybe we talked about Larry Walker, and maybe if you would tell him that kind of information, he'd be like, "Whoa, dude, that's way too much."
Yeah.
Just let my instincts take over. I know that if I do this and do that, then they're going to throw that. He might know that without really having to break it down into the X's and O's.
Yeah, but sometimes too, you do have to think about it though, because you're playing at such a high level. If you're in the minor leagues, the major leagues, there has to be some thinking about it. You can't not just rely on your instincts, because even Larry Walker saying I'm relying on my instincts, he's still sitting on a pitch, so he's still in a way thinking along with the pitcher.
Yeah, one of my favorite, I remember this post-game interview. It was Carlos Gonzalez, who, such a fan. He's so fun to watch. And being here in Colorado, I got to watch him for a long time and watch him progress as a player. But he, when someone thinks of him, here's this Venezuelan dude that can just mash, right? He just hit. There's no way he's thinking about this or that. Well, anyway, I don't know what happened, but he ended up hitting a walk-off in the 9th, like a walk-off double or something like that.
Sure.
And they're like, he threw the at-bat, and he went through every pitch and what he was thinking about on every pitch. And he's like, I looked so bad on that 1-0 changeup away. I knew he was going to go back to a changeup somewhere in that count.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he went changeup away in the dirt, and he looked bad on it. Then he went fastball in for a ball, and then he went changeup away. He didn't bury it. He left it in the strike zone, and that's when Gonzalez hit for the walk-off.
Yeah.
And it was that's it, man. That's hitting. If you're stupid and you don't think about things, he would have never had a walk-off. He would have ended up punching out on whatever.
Yeah.
Either a changeup, or he would have swung and missed at a changeup, and then he would have swung and missed probably at a high fastball in the next pitch or whatever.
Yeah. Let's shift gears to post-game now. How do you go about evaluating yourself as a hitter with the results that happened that night and something that you can take into the next day when you do arrive to the ballpark?
Yeah, it's always different, right? You get 3 hits and you just say, I'm going to go grab a couple beers. I'm good, man. I feel good. I'm going to enjoy this night. Now, not if you're in high school. That would not be only for professional guys, You can go have a cherry Coke or something like that. But sometimes you just feel good. And sometimes when you go over 5, you want to get a couple beers too. But Yes, you typically. I don't know if guys decompress as much after a game as preparing for the next game.
Sure.
That morning, or that day. It's probably a night game. So, if it's a bad game, like I really struggled. Okay, why did I struggle? I would say if I didn't struggle, then I'm showering. I'm going to go eat. Like I really, I'm not going to think about that anymore. But guys that do struggle, will typically think, why did I struggle here? As a coach, that's when I would go run reports and I'd go through my notes from the game, and I would make notes. I would have charts for every at bat, like what happened here. We were late on a 1-0 fastball. What happened here? We chased a 1-0 breaking ball. Okay, what happened later in the game? So if guys wanted to come to me, and say, hey, what'd you see last night? I didn't feel good in the box. I felt like I made bad decisions. Now I could go back to my report and say, oh, remember this at bat, and then we could pull it up on video, but at least I had notes on it, to figure out what it was. And then it's like, okay, well, how did they get you out? Man, every first pitch was a breaking ball and every first pitch was a hanger. Like, okay, so he's like, I was starting 0 for 1.
Yeah.
Like I was starting 0-1 every at bat, and I felt like I was fighting. Okay, well, what if we look for that breaking ball? I mean, they did it 3 out of 4 at bats. They had success beating you, right? They went slow early and fast late. Okay, so they're going to stick with that, today or tomorrow or whatever day, we're talking about. And then we change our mindset. And then for pregame, if it was that player, we would go in and I'd set a machine at a pretty darn good breaking ball, maybe an 80-mile-an-hour breaking ball, and let him see it and say, come on, this is your first at bat of the game. Here we go. Visualize it. Visualize that hanger in the on-deck circle. Even if it's not a hanger, that's the one you want to hit. So if you're visualizing that hanger that you want to hit this at bat, it might not be the first pitch, but you're probably going to get 2 or 3 curveballs, regardless of the count, based on, the knowledge we have from the previous game. And, you start visualizing it and seeing it, and now all of a sudden when that curveball comes out of the hand, we can react to it.
Yeah. Really quick.
I'm a big visualization guy. I really think that plays a massive role in confidence. I used to fall asleep, kind of thinking about pitches coming at me, and I could close my eyes and see a pitcher's windup. Like, I had the ability to see that. Like even hitters, like we talked about playing wiffle ball, I always had the ability to copy that stance or copy that windup. And same with pitchers. I can watch a pitcher and be like, I kind of know that. Now with all the VR stuff that's out there, which
and you guys use that, right?
Yeah. We see different balls coming in and break. I can set that thing. Hey, we can do this like 5 minutes before you're at bat. Go sit in front of your locker. Go sit in a quiet room. Put the headset on and just watch this left-handed guy throwing breaking balls at you. And they can see 50 of those in a row in 4 minutes. And okay, boom! I have that mental. I have that mental vision and what I'm going to see when I get out on the field.
Really quick, what kind of reports? What goes into your reports at the end of games at night or whatever afternoon?
Yeah. So typically, I'll have something with me during the game, that I'm putting myself as a coach in the position of that player, right? Maybe he's a 5'7" left-hander. Okay, I'm a 5'7" left-hander right now. Like, how am I approaching this at bat?
Sure.
Or I'm a right-handed power hitter. How am I approaching this at bat? And so I would go through and just kind of mark, which pitches they got each at bat. They get fastballs here, they get, breaking balls here. What did they swing at? What was the count when they attacked that pitch? How many pitches are they seeing per at bat? And what kind of success, obviously, they're having. So, sometimes you have coaches that are like, hey, get deep in the count, see a lot of pitches. And you know what? Sometimes that's great for a guy that hits at the top of the order, a little left-hander. But sometimes that's not great, depending on the swing plane. Like if you have a swing plane that is, outhouse or penthouse, and you start seeing a lot of pitches, you're probably going to strike out a lot because you're going to miss a lot of pitches. You're not going to be able to battle with 2 strikes unless you have very elite eye-hand coordination. So versus a guy that has maybe a really flat swing plane and is in the zone for a long time, that guy can see a lot of pitches and then keep fighting. So I will put myself in that, and then I'll just mark it, right? Like if this was a good at bat or this was a bad at bat, and then I'll throw a highlighter on it so I can go back and look at video of that at bat, from games so I can see where the pitches were that they may have missed. So I'll go through and see how many balls did we foul off that were hittable. Because sometimes hitters will say, I just didn't get any good pitches tonight. So what I'll do that night or the next day is go through and say, look at these pitches you took. Look at these pitches that you fouled off.
Right.
Like these were hit. You should have never even gotten to a 1-2 count. Mm-hmm. Like you should have hit this ball right here. If you can't hit this pitch, we got problems.
Yeah.
Because that was a mistake. And, okay, what was the problem? Well, I was a little bit late. You sure were. How are you late when the count was 1-0? Mm-hmm. Like, what are you possibly looking for where you're going to be late on a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, right? And I'll start to kind of batter them a little bit. Okay, yes, I should have been ready for that pitch. Okay, that's the one I need to attack. And I say, look at the pitch you struck out on. Right? That was nasty.
Yeah.
You're going to hit that. If I throw that pitch 50 times, how many times are you going to get a hit on that pitch? None.
Right.
Right.
Or even get a piece, hit it, maybe foul it off hard.
Right. Maybe you can foul it off half the time.
Yeah.
So it's like you weren't going to hit that pitch with 2 strikes. It was this pitch in this count that you missed, which may have caused that strikeout. It wasn't the pitch that actually caused the strikeout. Okay. And then sometimes you lose. Geez, they stuck the bat up my rear end tonight. Gosh, you went over 4. What did you see, man? Well, let's go through your at-bats. You saw 17 pitches, and one of them was hittable.
Yeah.
and you took it, because it was whatever. And it's like, hey, new day, buddy.
Yeah.
They're not going to pitch you that well today. And boom, let's get out there and get confident. So that I would try to encompass that without it taking up my entire life, but it did. As a baseball coach, you live in that office. That game may be 3 hours, but you're probably at that park for 12 to 14 hours.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, yes, you do.
Final segment of the show coming up where we answer a question from a listener. But first, I want to let you know that the Dunedin Blue Jays J Shop is now open. Yes, the minor league season, of course, was canceled, and a lot of us throughout baseball, and even fans who aren't in the industry, are saddened by that. But there is some better news on the horizon here. The J Shop in Dunedin will have private shopping appointments available, and it's already started. It started on July 1st. And we do have some curbside pickups for online orders as well. So for new procedures, how to book appointments, available times, and more, and to order your stuff, of course, log on to DunedinBlueJays.com and click on the J Shop. Final segment. Do we have time for one question?
Sure, of course.
Right, one question. We had a couple of questions.
What if I said no? How many people would be so upset?
Well, if you said, here's what I would have done. If you would have said no, I would have said, all right, well, be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And next week, we're talking about this. See you later. Happy 4th of July, everybody. But luckily, you said yes, right? So we'll do one question today. We had a couple of questions come in. And unfortunately, we can't get to all of them. We will get to the couple of questions, though, next week. But there is this one question I want to get to because I literally got this question on Instagram. Nobody likes to email jimbopodcast21@gmail.com for whatever reason. So they like to reach out to me on Instagram with the question here. Let me try to find it. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, there it is. Okay. This is from, again, somebody who has actually emailed us, or he emailed us. No, he reached out to me on Instagram with the question. I don't know. I don't remember now. But AD number 5, he's a loyal listener to the show. He literally, once this episode was released last Monday, he sent this message, which, hey, early bird gets the worm, right? I mean, we always talk about that. He sent me this at 12:38 p.m. last Monday, Eastern Time. So I have to get to this question this week, just this one. He says, Jim, it might be too early to start asking questions for next week's podcast, but I have to ask. Never too early, Mr. AD, or anybody else out there who wants to ask a question. Most of baseball now seems to frown on the idea of taking the first pitch for a strike. Okay, but the best player in baseball, Mike Trout, it's a good answer right there, I agree, is notorious for not swinging at the first pitch. Also, Ted Williams recommends taking the first pitch. You're shaking your head up and down. Yes, so you agree. However, many guys do well swinging at the first pitch and not getting behind. What gives?
I decided I didn't want to answer the question, so we're
be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. Every episode, 9 a.m. on Monday.
That's it. AD is pissed right now. Yes, so Ted Williams, let me my tell me. It was never, or it said Williams said you should take the first pitch off of a new pitcher you haven't seen before that you will see more than one time during the game. Okay, so that was back in the day. I just saw a box score where Warren Spahn threw 201 pitches.
All right.
And it was like a 14-inning game, and the other guy threw 194 pitches, right? Mm-hmm. So a somewhat different game back then, right? So my dad used to say, if you're going to face this guy 3 or 4 times, you should definitely take the first pitch. See where the release point is, see what his windup is, yada, 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 right? And Trout everybody is different. I think Mike Trout probably has different vision and eye-hand coordination and fast twitch muscles that are different than most people that walk planet Earth.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, you have to put him, you have baseball players that are freaks, and then you have Mike Trout, right? And then you have the guys at the top 2% of Major League Baseball. So, yes, can he give away something? Heck yeah, because he is a little bit quicker to the ball than most people, and he's a little bit stronger than most people, and maybe he sees 2012. So, without kind of overdoing this, I wouldn't do that off of a reliever. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you're going to only see this guy one time, the last thing I'm going to do is give away a pitch. Okay, pitchers are too good to give away strikes now. Yeah. If it's the first inning of a day game and we've played 8 night games in a row, probably going to take the first pitch just to kind of see what everything looks like. Yeah. Like, I have no problem doing that my first time up. Okay, I was actually taught to do that my first time up.
Yeah.
Now everybody's different. I think I told you the story that my dad used to give me the hit and run side with no one on base because I used to take too many pitches. I was too selective, and he wanted to get me to swing the bat. So you have to treat everybody differently. Mm-hmm. For me, I am not in the mindset, maybe because I'm an offensive person, of giving away a good pitch. Now, if I have my guys are sitting there and this guy's throwing a lot of breaking balls first pitch, and he's not throwing them for strikes, and he's throwing changeup. Yeah, I'm talking more at the amateur level, like, high school and below for sure. And my guys are sitting there swinging at 0-0 changeups and 0-0 sliders. Now it's time to make an adjustment. But I think as players get older, they have to figure out, because there are guys with really high percentages of hits on first pitch, right? But sometimes it's not always, you have to look at the stats. Is it that did they hit the first pitch or did they not miss it? Did they foul it off? Did they put it in play?
Sure.
Do they end up getting a hit later in that same at bat? Yeah. So, there's a lot you can. Well, it's like politics, right? You can pick and choose whatever you want to see.
Right.
Right. I want to look at that model, or I want to look at that pitch and that about. Hey, I'm a guy that swings early in the count. Okay, I'm going to skew those stats and say, hey, when I swing at the first pitch, I hit 350. Well, do you hit 350 on the first pitch? Or is it you hit 350 that at bat? Maybe on the fourth pitch you see. So you never really true know. But I think certain players can sit on, and take the first pitch, and certain guys can't. I think that's what it comes down to. But I definitely wouldn't take a first pitch off of a pitcher that I wasn't going to see more than once.
You gave away one of your secrets, by the way, in that answer. One of your,
which you have to. We'll just delete it.
The one about your dad giving you a little piece of advice to swing the bat more.
Yeah, and it was there. I mean, he used to swing the. Yeah, there was an adjective that usually went in there. Yeah. Between swing the and bat, that used to. I'd perk up a little. Okay, I better swing the bat. Yeah. Like, did you really give me that sign? Yeah. And I would. It was, and whether it was concentration, it was when I was younger, but whether it was concentration or not being aggressive, whatever it was. Oh gosh, I think that's why he doesn't have any hair now. He's so like, how do you take that, Jake? What do you? Yeah, to a fastball. Like, and you know what? I never really understood it until last two springs ago when I was at Mizzou and I was fresh there, right? Like I came in at the semester right before the season. I only knew the guys for about, maybe a month, 3-4 weeks, starting to get to know them. We go down to Florida. We haven't played outside yet, right? We had terrible weather in Columbia. We go down to Florida, and like the first 3 games, we take so many fastballs early in the count, and I'm losing my marbles. Like, you got to be kidding me. And I bet it took me 2-3 weeks to get those guys to be more aggressive early in the count. And all of a sudden, our run production, we were scoring like 4 runs a game. All of a sudden, we started scoring like 10 runs a game.
Yeah.
Just by, getting guys to kind of buy in and not be so patient. And that's, and then that may be, what they were used to. Like, hey, we got to get deep in the count. And some guys can do that, but most guys can't.
Right.
It's an offensive game. We have a bat in our hand. We need to do something with it. That's kind of my mindset.
And that just goes to show you that how important wisdom really is, that your father could take that approach and use that little coaching point and say, hey, act like it's hit and run. And because I guarantee you nowadays, if you ask some of these coaches out there, air quotes, coaches out there, hey, how can you present them with that situation? They'll tell you something that is straight off the book, but it's not out of the box combined with that type of wisdom. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, you have to have experience, and he didn't do that with other players, but it worked for me, to kind of get me. It just got me thinking, like, did he really just give me that? Oh, okay. He needs me to be on point here. Like, I need to be ready to hit like 100%, and then at the last second, if it's a ball, take it.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's the whole yes, 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 no, and one of my favorite sayings, and I probably said it before, which is, it's silly when you just hear it, but I always tell players, hey, remember, every pitch is a strike until it's not.
Right.
And if you're in the batter's box and you're trying to figure out, is it going to be a strike or a ball? And you're making your decision, you're going to be late. But if you're in there saying this ball is going to be right down the middle, it's going to be in my wheelhouse, I'm going to absolutely destroy this, and then it's not, well, you can always take it. But you can never make up your mind that it is fast enough, that it is a strike, and be on time.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up. Be sure to like, for the 800th time, be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on social media. At Epstein Hitting, at Jim Tara. And be sure to email us your questions. You can submit your questions via social media, but email as well. JimboPodcast21 at gmail.com. JimboPodcast21 at gmail.com. We will get to a couple of more questions next week. And in that episode, we'll be discussing attack angle, which is something that you use, against launch angle, how they are similar, how they correlate, all things attack angle and launch angle next week. That'll be episode lucky number 13, A-Rod 13.
There you go. Yep, that should be interesting. I think a lot of people, even at high levels, are very confused that just because your attack angle goes up means your launch angle goes up, and that's not always the case.
So we'll be talking about that next week. Thank you for listening. Have a safe week, and we will talk to you next Monday.